I want you to listen to me real close here for just the next few minutes. This subject is so important, I believe it's so important that we need to take note of this. Paul and Silas had just come from this victory at Lydia's house. And now they shared the gospel. Their whole household, they're on the mountaintop experience because somebody came to the Lord. The last time you shared the gospel with somebody and they came to the Lord, didn't you just have a great joy inside of you? And this is what was happening. And it was so important that they baptized them right on the spot. That they wanted to be baptized right on the spot. What a great victory for the Lord. The Lord opened their hearts to the message and it bore fruit. But you know, we must remember something. Our battle is not always flesh and blood. It's spiritual. And so as they were walking to worship, the spiritual battle began. And I'll tell you something that's real important. When something great, something spiritually great happens in your life, I guarantee you Satan's going to battle it right after that. You know, when I've led people to the Lord down front here, you know what I try to tell them after the service? Be careful, because Satan's going to try to steal this from you. He's going to try to tell you that it didn't really happen, you didn't need to do this, and all the things that come along with that. And the battle begins. And here's this lady shouting at the top of their voice, "These are the servants of the Most High God." But who is she talking about? We assume God, right? We assume that he's talking about, you know, that they're serving Jesus Christ. We need to be careful and guard our influence. We need to guard against things that would steal the glory from Jesus Christ. A lot of times, we'll hear the joy come out and the acclamations come out. I tell you when we do it sometimes. We do it sometimes when there's good music up here. We clap. We need to be careful how we clap. Are we clapping because of the person doing good music? Are we clapping because we're honoring God for the message that came through that music? So we've got to be careful, because sometimes it can be misunderstood that we're giving accolades to the person instead of giving accolades to God Almighty. And here's what was happening. This lady was shouting, and it was bringing attention to them. But who was the attention going to? It was going to Paul and Silas and this lady yelling instead of going to God. We need to be real careful and guard our influence and make sure it's going to God. The second thing is that we need to guard the things that can be misunderstood. This was the Greco-Roman Empire situation here. And the Most High God was Zeus. And everybody understood that as she was hollering this servant of the Most High God. They were understanding maybe it was Zeus instead of God Almighty. I think that's the reason why Paul turns around and casts the demon out of this lady. Because the influence was going to the wrong person. It was going to what they understood as God and their paganism instead of God Almighty. I want to tell you that our influence among people are so important. We should never let anything or anyone give it in a way that would not represent the gospel of Jesus Christ. In fact, Ephesians 5:1 says this, be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice of God. See, as the result of the fortune teller stealing Paul and Silas's influence. Paul has had just enough of her, and he casts the demon out. Little did he know that that was going to cost him more, because he ended up in jail. There's a second point I want to tell you this morning that's real important. In tough times, your influence is going to be the greatest. Let me repeat that. In tough times, your influence is going to be the greatest. Look at verse 24. Upon receiving such orders, he put them into the inner cell and fastened their feet in the stocks. The inner cell, the worst cell. There wasn't a worse place for them to be at the time. It was probably could have been the worst situation that they could be in. And what did they do? They sang praises to God, and that influence was going out to the jailer. The jailer is probably sitting there listening. Man, these guys are kind of crazy. They're singing praises to God, and they're in hot water. They're in a place that they can't get out of. They just got beaten. They just got thrown in jail. Their feet was out and straight in stocks, which means that there was a wooden piece over them where they couldn't move. Their hands were in chains. And they had turned that jail into Sing Sing. They were praising God. How do you live your faith in the worst situation? How do you demonstrate that God is in control when the very worst is happening to you? How is the message of the salvation through Jesus Christ given through you when everything seems to be going awry? You know that when things are at the worst, when the things